So yes, the topic of today is how you can automate your SAP PI to PO migrations. I know a lot of companies are currently in this process because end of support and stuff like that. And one of the things we have been working on is to make it as easy as possible for you to run migrations and run the full process. And this is what we want to cover today. So I have that's the topic. So the first thing we want to cover is why do you need to upgrade to 7.5? Do you need to do an upgrade or migration? And then we'll cover the automation with the FIGAF tool. There's, I guess, no no reason to hide that we're creating automation tools. So the SAP roadmap I just updated for this presentation. Last time I hosted this was in January. The roadmap was a little different because we were expecting that 7.5 ended support in 2024. Now it's in 2027. That's not going to be a new PI release, and you can get the extended support until 2030. The thing that still stands is that everything but 7.5 will end support in 2020, or end support in 2020. So in 2021 it will not be supported. So you got like 7 months to do the migration, depending on a little how you're counting. So it is something that you need to get started on right now, so you can, not get afterwards. So I guess that is the reason why automation is good. And I reckon if you are here now, it's probably because you either have a too complex system or there really haven't been the real business case for it. Now you have the business case that you are running out of support. I do hear some options saying, okay, you could go to Rimini Street or some of the other support organization and get support for your old platform, but I guess that still means that it will not really be updated. You will still have problems with adapters not being supported and stuff like that, and no new development coming on it. So it may be a good way to do, or something you can do in a process. But yeah, the idea is you need to migrate or upgrade to it. There is the thing that SAP CPI can take over some of the integration work that you're working on, and if you have, let's say, complex or some integration process, or if you have a small landscape, it may be beneficial to say, okay, we'll spend a little more, do a migration to CPI, but then we don't need to install a new CPI system or a new PI system, do an upgrade. We can just move the interfaces one by one to it. And I think if you are below like 50 interfaces, migration to CPI, if that's feasible, is really a good option, because it is the future platform. It will get a lot of improvements. So but obviously, and also in the roadmap, it got an idea about you can deploy it, get some kind of an installation you can run on your own landscape or on your own hardware to be closer to your data. So that's sometime next year. It's scheduled. Let's see. We did cover a little about this upgrade versus migration. Upgrade is I guess the simple approach. I would recommend an upgrade if you have that option. The thing is, I would recommend you do it if you have a single stack only. You can upgrade to 7.5 fairly easy. Because you would be using all IQs or whatever, and that's a little simpler. The challenge is obviously it's just one go live you have, so if something goes bad, you definitely need to have it tested, validated that we have applied it. And I guess most cases it's mostly just like applying any other support package. you upgrade and everything works, or it doesn't, or something doesn't work, and I guess that's all just something you need to put into your test cases. So yeah, it requires good testing to do it, depending on the complexity of scenario. If it's some pretty simple scenarios, you may not need as much testing because yeah, it's not that complicated. If you have complicated, and I think the biggest challenge would be message mappings, that if you have EDI message mapping or something like that, that you may need to do something on this to simplify the delivery. If you have a dual stack, you can do a dual stack split and then delete the ABAP stack afterwards. But again, it requires a lot of complexity going live at one point in time with all your data. If you have a complex scenario doing other things, a migration is probably the way to go. And the idea is you just install a new landscape completed with all the different scenarios you need. Then you can go live with 5 interfaces at the time, see the system performs, and if there's any bad things, you can always fall back on your existing infrastructure. So it's something that lowers the risk, but obviously adds some more complexity because you need to migrate content one by one. You need to make sure everything's configured and stuff like that. So it depends on your scenario, which one you want to choose of this. Yeah, so I guess the problem, at least with some of these things, is you probably have a lot of other integration works going on, and these guys would like to see some new integration being developed, and you cannot really say for the next 6 months we're just going to not do anything but do migrations. So it's something about getting some qualified resources that could work on it, coordinating testing with business, and that's also one of the huge challenges. We need to get business involved in testing, and how do you manage that? And then obviously a big part is also how do you architect? Do you need to create some new ways to handle these different things? So I've written a blog on some of these different topics we have, and I'll just put it into the chat so you can take it there. Where I've just going through a lot of these things with CPI, and I guess why many organizations still need to migrate. This is, I guess, the webinar I've hosted in recent time that had the most people sign up, so it is interesting, and I guess that's why you are here. If I look at the IFD survey, then around 45% still had not upgraded in summer of 19. So I know definitely a lot of customers over the last 6 months have upgraded, but there's still time to go. And then I guess some customers also got the S4 project starting, adding some more into the migration timeline. And then you got some unforeseen corona thing you also need to figure out how to deal with. So one of the things we've got a lot of customers on is the seeburger migration. So you probably have a seeburger already or you may have seeburger. I'll just spend a few minutes on this, and you want to migrate it from should be switched on. You want to migrate from seeburger to B2B Add-on, and the challenge with this is these are not one-to-one. So what you want to so here we have, as this is a seeburger start with list, and here's the same document in B2B Add-on, and there's some differences in the structure, and that means that you can take a document, you can convert it and say, okay, now this is my new one, but then you have to remap a lot of the fields because they're moving around in the structures. And that's the challenge. So the first one is you can create a mapping from the B2B schema to the seeburger structure. Just create like a one-to-one mapping from each of these. It will add a little extra complexity to the mapping, and you can just reuse them in the different scenarios. Yeah, it works, and yeah, and then you obviously need to do it from the other way around. The other approach is to take the seeburger structure, remap everything, and just have one message mapping. And then obviously that simplifies the monitoring at a later point in time and maintenance, because you know there's only one place you need to maintain all the mappings in. Maybe the best approach is if you just start out fresh, recreate your whole full B2B solution, leveraging the trading partner management. It is probably a little more complex, and you need to have some more time for it, and some good B2B architects that can create this structure for you. So we just talked about the structure of these is a little differently, and how do you deal with it? So we have created a small tool. Let me show it here. So here's a tool. It's a standalone application that you have on your laptop. You just connect it to the PI system with a username password, and then you can select a message mapping. So let me just move this in. It's not this one. It was this one. So here we have the message mapping as it looks now. We can see it's a list mapping, which means it is a seeburger structure. And what I want to do is I can see it's an invoice, and I can see the B2B invoice format here. So what I will select is I'll just select convert. This will then download the seeburger or the B2B or the seeburger mapping, convert it. So it will go through all the different fields on it, and then we can just upload it. If there's any errors, we'll see it, and we can set up manual configuration of some of these things. And then you can then open it again. You will then just need to go through this, edit it, and we can see it has mapped all the different fields we had before. So it will preserve your mapping and just have one standard way of handling this. So now you can just need to edit, save it, and then you're good to go. But yeah, we'll not do that. Any questions on this seeburger migration? Then just put them into the chat. So the idea is it's a fixed price. You pay per mapping you convert, and obviously if you convert 400 mappings or whatever, you get it a little cheaper than this. And if there's any problems with mapping, you can also reach support, and they will help you either specify some specific conversion for that mapping or handle it in a different way. And I think we actually support all the different formats in the TPM document, or that B2B add-on. So there's also one more we support. So all is supported that you can do here. So that was it. If you go to I guess that's the FIGAF site, you can get a free trial on it and get first 10 mappings free that you can use for the migration and save some time on it. Just briefly spoke about this. Remapping is probably a better way, but it does require quite a lot of effort, and I'm not sure if the benefit of the organization is really there. So uploading is manually, so that was what I did just by clicking this one. It will just upload the data to the PI system. So the only thing is you just need to go through edit, which will then compile the mapping into whatever Java mapping it creates in the background, and then you're good to go. So it handles that all by itself. So you just need these whatever 3 clicks, 4 clicks to convert the mapping. Did that answer the question? Anything else on the seeburger migration? Good. Otherwise, we will get some time to some Q&A at the end. So the PI project is also a challenging, and yeah, if we're doing a migration, you need to have a tool, or you can use the standard tool. So SAP comes with a standard migration tool that you can use. And I do recommend that you try it out and see what it can compare to the FIGAF tool. What we want to do is we just want to ensure that you're engaged in the full process and being able to manage it without having to do a lot of maintenance or anything like that in an Excel report or wherever. We just want to make it simple to get started with this. So the idea is also, yeah, simplify the risk, simplify the process, and just get much more predictability in the migration process. So we have a landscape where you have an old system and a new system, and then we want to take the content from here, migrate it to over here, and we want to take the configurations of the communication channels down here and copy them to the configurations over here. And yeah, it's obviously can be done manually or with the migration tool, but we just want to make it much easier to manage the full process. So we have 2 steps in our process here. One that's for the migration, where we migrate, copy all the data, create test cases, copy all the repository objects, migrate it to the new system. And then we have another one where we are going in the new system and configuring communication channels, activating them and everything like that. So hopefully we'll get to do both. So FIGAF handles the transport. It has a built-in transport functionality, so you can simply manage the full process here. Yeah, import file using the file import, and directory is also converted using the ICO and all the other objects below it. So let's show in action, and if any questions during the way, just put in the chat and I'll try to answer it. So here we have the FIGAF tool. Here we're just seeing a sample or one of the agents we have connected to. From this agent we have downloaded all the configuration, all the directory and everything like that from it, mappings and everything like that. So we have versions. We can see when something was changed on this specific scenario. Then we have created some landscapes. We have defined a landscape for our from our old system to our new a migration that's covering this one, the import export, and then we got 2 landscapes that correspond to the old and the new landscape. And we will start with creating a release, and a release is a simple way of handling all the things you need in a migration. So we will create a migration. It needs to use the old system as the source system. It needs to use the new system as the target system, and then we have a migration path that needs to contain these 2 things into it. So now we've created a release, and in this release we can then go and say, okay, now we want to add some integrations that we need to handle in this case. So we have here an integration scenario. We can add integration scenarios on the old system. We can assign it to a specific user that needs to handle this. So let's take these 2. and let's say good. We'll just request licenses for this. And now we have requested license, and then it's creating some tickets that we can use to manage this. And with this, you can then always follow how long the data is in the process. So we have the scenario, we can see. So we will open it, open the tickets perspective of this. So let's just see if any of these have some test cases. So we can look up what kind of test cases. We don't have anyone for this one. We can create test cases. Let me just take the other one. One I just worked on. We'll just look at test case creation a little later if we got some time for it. So here we have one test, one iFlow. We want to migrate. I would say that the VGAF tool is better than the SAP migration tool. Hopefully you'll agree on that by the end of the demonstration. That's the reason why I want to create it. So here we have some test cases that we already created. We'll just show you later how to create test cases. And the test case creation is also useful for upgrades. So now we have created some test cases here. We can then run them on a specific system. Right now it's only on our development system. And these have been created as confidential. That means we cannot really test them on our development box because they are confidential. So we can only test them on our productive system. So, but now we have some test cases. And what we can then do is we can move to development. And in development phase, we can start a transport. And the transport will then take all the repository objects and directory objects you're using. So here we got two directory transport and one directory transport. So we can then import it. We can see if there's any difference between the old and the new system of these objects. And yeah. So now we've imported that one. We need to import the other one. And lastly, we have the configuration. It has an option here to say migrate password if possible. So if you have HTTP password, anything like that on the old system, you can configure it here. We have the option here to look at all the configurations. So if we look here at the configurations, we can see the old system has this configuration and the new system is, as default, just use the same configuration. We can go in and say, okay, this needs to be a new system number for some of these different things. So you have pretty wide flexibility in the configurations that you can make. So, and you have that for all objects for communication channels. You can configure these as you like in the full landscape, and that means you do not really have to go into the target system to run the transport and see how it goes. So now we have configured everything. It looks okay. We have migrated it to the development box, and that should be good. So now we can go back to our ticket. We can say, okay, now we have resolved this. We have moved and transported it. If we have not created the test cases from a confidential system. So a confidential system is, for instance, if you have confidential data in your productive system, you're taking data from the productive system and running tests with it, then you don't really want everybody to be able to see and leverage these. And we just put in a block that allows you not to run these tests. And if you run them and want to see the content, they're all scrambled. So we'll say this is resolved. So now in our migration, we can see we got one IQ here that has been migrated, and that means it's now on our new development box. What we can then do is we can go to our tickets perspective, we can select this, we can migrate configuration, and this will then take all the communication channels and everything like that, copy the relevant communication channels across all of the different things, and all the different iFlows and everything like that. So now it's a lot simpler for you to configure it. And that means if you go and create the development ticket of this, and the development ticket is the one that takes it into the new landscape. So yes, so now we can see our development tickets. Let's just open that one. So a question, migration from 7.31 to 7.5. Do we need to recompile Java mapping? You don't really need to recompile the Java mappings. They're actually still saved in the same format. And it is using as default Java 5 as the compilation engine. I think one of the new functionality is that up here you can go in and edit and say, okay, now this needs to be compiled to Java 8 if you want that. So that would be a way to get around and configure it. But in general, you don't need to recompile anything, unless obviously you're migrating from seeburger to B2B Add-on, then it's a new mapping you need to create. So now, yeah, we can start our transport, and the transport here still works the same way. So it also creates exports here. So the process here is actually the same thing as you would be able to do when you're doing a normal development, managing these things. So we can see here what are the objects, we can see if this actually is in the productives or in the target system, what the values it is expecting to change when importing this. So we'll send it to approval, and luckily I'm logged in as one that has access to approve it also, which is nice. We can see we cannot import it because yeah, it needs to be migrated, or all transport needs to be approved. We'll send it to approval, and we just got the last one, which is then yeah, the directory transport, and here we just want to make sure we have mapped these correctly. So these components are then mapped to the correct system. They're added in the SLD, and you can both do it manually here, or you can do it on a global level and create mappings for your full landscape here. And here we can see, if we look at the file sender, it should most likely on the test system use the yeah, the test here. And so now we're send it to approval, and we can now start to approve it and import it. So now we need to improve this one also. And now we can import the two things. Let me just get it here. We used to have some systems that were a little longer away from it, and that made some of these were a little more challenging to run. So now we have created this, and hopefully now we can also run our test cases. So our test-based cases has been copied over, and we should now be able to run it on our T75, which is a secured system. Okay. Okay, so we have some of these test cases that are not really linked correctly. Let's see here. This one looks a bit linked. Link test cases. Agent test cases. Run on. So I'm missing some mapping with the test cases on this. We'll do testing just later, and it's the same process whatever you're using. But yeah, so then you from your ticket can say resolve. You can then go back to your release, and in the release you will then have full information about where you are in the process of these things. So and then once it has been imported correctly, you will then see it here in production, and you can then follow the process, see how well your migration is going. You have the option on each ticket also, if you need to create documentations, we can create a report that shows what kind of objects you have created and everything like that. So it simplifies the process of testing and doing these things. So here we can see all the transport that we've created, all the attached objects that we have as a part of this, how many versions they have, and we can see the global schema for this. So there's some questions. The tool I'm sharing is the FIGAF tool. It's built by us to manage PI first, and now also CPI and API management. So you have the same kind of process, look and feel, no matter which of the platform do you want to do this. Yes, there's a lot of different steps, and if you want to try it out, probably you want us just to help go through the first schema on this and just make sure you have set up everything correctly. So let's if this is something you want to try out, the idea is to set up a session, and then we can help you work through this. We do not have a PI to CPI migration yet. It is something we are considering, how we can add what needs to be there and what's the minimal viable solution for it. So obviously the first would be to do test cases, which should be pretty simple. But as soon as you get into more complicated scenario, it's about how to just copy and paste the content. It becomes a little more challenging, but it's one of the things we're looking for. So what's the logical way of handling changes in here? So now we have our tracked object in our development ticket. Then we can go in, update our message mapping, make the different changes that is needed for it to work. And it will then be registered on the development ticket that you use in the new landscape, and go through and configure everything there. Good. So let me just, so obviously testing is a huge part of this, and one of the challenges with a migration is that you need to go to business and say, hey, could you help test this for us, because we now need to migrate it and we have updated something. We don't really know what it is, but yes, so this is the approach if you do an upgrade from whatever 731 and have some ICOs you'd want to test. So the idea is that you can select ICOs from a system, so you select them. Oh, let me just, so that was my prod system. Let's just do it here. Test system. So here we have a number of ICOs. We can say record messages. We can so we can create them in a test suite. The test suite can either be finance or something else. We can specify how many messages we want for each of them. We can extract the partner or any other information that's important. So it could either be, if it's invoice, extract the document type, credit invoice or whatever, and then the idea is you can then trim these test cases so you can see, okay, we need to have them a little simpler. So we will select it, and the idea is that the tool will then log onto your PI system, configure the communication channels add a module, either the SAP log module or the FIGAF log module to it. And then it will just wait until you have received a number of messages on this. So I will need to trigger these messages, I think. Just do it over here. Multis. Select all. Start. So hopefully we got some test cases if I select the right agent. So now we can see we got some test cases for these messages. And the idea is that you just let it run in the background from your productive system, download these data. If it's confidential, you would use those, or also it will see it as confidential. So now we have created some test cases for this. We can extract it. We can see how it maps to the different systems. So now we have created it. So now we have created a test case, and we can then run it on any of the systems in our landscape where this resides. And obviously you cannot run it on productive system if you unless you select some different things on it. So the idea is we'll send these messages through. So we can see it here. Here we have our result of this comparison of this run. We can view the results, and we can see everything successful. We can go and view differences, and we can see we have actually ignored the time, since that's always being changed. So it's really simple. Just click on a line. It'll give you a suggested XPath. It also do support B2B Add-on, B2B schema, so you can do ignoring of edifact and X12 and be really precise about what in this segment ignore this content. So that's the testing, and that's obviously a part of the migration. So now once you're doing the migration, it will see you're making a change to this interface. What are the iFlow, or what are the test cases we have for it? And then from the ticket you can then see who have made this change. So I guess the answer to the question how this is different than the SAP migration tool, it's about managing the full migration process that you have. So one question asked, is there an advantage to migrate from 731 rather than lower version of yeah, so obviously you can migrate either to a PI 731 or to a CPI system. I guess that all depends on how you are in your project, where you're going to move, and I think for some customers it will be a benefit just to go with a CPI instead of a 7.5 scenario, because it's a simpler. We do not handle non-ICO, but we do support that you can fetch test cases from dual stack system. So we don't have messages on it. So the idea is that if you go to a dual stack system, so here we have our old dual stack system, we can then go in and see we have some receiver determination. We can create recordings on this, and this will then look at the logs you have for receiver determinations in that process. That was Tom. Yeah, I think SAP has a pretty good tool to handle the migration if you have ICO to or receiver determination to, or classical to an ICO, and I don't think we could really recreate anything like that. So I think that's something that SAP is probably better at. We do though help with the testing, where we can take the messages and be able to test everything easier. So there's no tool to migrate from 7.5 or to CPI. It's all something you need to handle yourself. You can migrate message mappings. SAP will create a tool at some point in time, and I think we will also upgrade ours to be able to handle migrations. When, I'm not really sure. I hope we'll be able to do it soon, because obviously, yeah, if you have 50 scenarios, easier to migrate to CPI than having to migrate at a later point in time. So yeah, I guess I'll create a webinar where we'll cover a little more about the CPI, what we can do there. Otherwise, let me just put so we don't have CPI migrations yet, and it's not really anything that's supported. So I think we do have, for instance, something like this. Global. So this is a small YouTube video of what we can do and manage CPI, just as we did here. So yeah, currently migration to CPI is manually. So we can add some extra options if that's something you want. seeburger adapters, seeburger's 997 to the AI separator. Obviously the seeburger migration with maybe not the classical, but there's some other consulting thing we can add to it. So it's licensed per the ICO you're going to use it for, and yeah, let's see how many you have, and if there's a lot, we can find a good price that makes this useful for you to simplify your delivery process. So to set up a proof of concept, FIGAF is a standalone tool. It comes with a built-in database. It's good for trial. It takes like 10 minutes to get started. If you want to connect it to the PI system, it takes a little extra. And for running it, you can run it on a server with 4 different commercial databases. I guess the most standard ones, Postgres is the DB2, Oracle, and Microsoft are the ones we support for this. And you can go to figaf.com/IoT, download it, and see how it works. And obviously, there's a lot of improvements also on how you can manage the standard PI scenarios. Actually, I think you can right now get like 50 migrations for free. So it's pretty good way to get started, and then you can compare it. Does this make it easier than SAP's migration tool or not? Good. I think that was what I wanted to cover in this. I guess this was a little fast. I hope you got some of the ideas that what we're able to achieve. Taking test data, anonymize it. Oh, I guess we need to hear that. Show this. So let me just see. We had these test data that we created in our ticket, and we had here, and we can drill down and see these. So these were the ones that were marked as confidential, And what we do have when we're seeing confidential data is that everything is masked, so no one would actually be able to see the content of this. And that means that, yeah, it will be, yeah, you can let non-employees or external work on your migration, test it, and they cannot really see what the values they're testing, just that they are testing. And we have some measures in place that allow you to view payloads, but not the one that is coming with the specific configuration. Yeah, and it also allows you to see dynamic properties and stuff like that. Yes, I did see. Yeah, they are talking about it, that you can run a CPI on premise from next year. Looking forward to see what that's going to be like, and obviously that will be nice for some of the customers. But I guess on the other hand, yeah, if you needed to have migrated first, how's that gonna be? But obviously it plays into your integration strategy, which of these platforms you're using. So back to Q&A. Any questions? Put them into the chat.